Chapter 6. I turned the doorknob and pushed, but the door refused to open. I tried again. It took me a while to realize it was locked. The library was closed. The rain pattered softly on the grass as I walked around to the front door. It was high off the ground. I had to pull myself up on the window ledge to look inside. Darkness. Total darkness. I felt relieved and disappointed at the same time. I wanted my skates, but I didn't really want to go back in there. "I'll get them tomorrow," I said out loud. I lowered myself to the ground. The rain was starting to come down harder, and the wind was picking up, blowing the rain in sheets. I started to run, my sneakers squishing over the wet grass. I ran all the way home. I was totally drenched by the time I made my way through the front door. My hair was matted down on my head. My t-shirt was soaked through. "Mom! Dad! Are you home?" I cried. I ran through the hallway, nearly slipping on the smooth floor, and burst into the kitchen. "A monster!" I cried. "Huh?" Randy was seated at the kitchen table, snapping a big pile of string beans for Mom. He was the only one who looked up. Mom and Dad were standing at the counter, rolling little meatballs in their hands. They didn't even turn around. "A monster!" I screamed again. "Where?" Randy cried. "Did you get caught in the rain?" Mom asked. "Don't you say hi?" Dad asked. "Do you just explode into a room yelling? Don't I get a hi, Dad, or anything?" "Hi, Dad," I cried breathlessly. "There's a monster in the library." "Lucy, please," Mom started impatiently. "What kind of monster?" Randy asked. He had stopped snapping the ends of the beans and was staring hard at me. Mom finally turned around. "You're soaked," she cried. "You're dripping all over the floor. Get upstairs and change into dry clothes." Dad turned too, a frown on his face. "Your mother just washed the floor," he muttered. "I'm trying to tell you something," I shouted, raising my fists in the air. "No need to scream," Mom scolded. "Get changed, then tell us." "But Mr. Mortman is a monster," I cried. "Can't you save the monster stuff till later?" "I just got home, and I've got the worst headache," Dad complained. His eyes stared down at the kitchen floor. Small puddles were forming around me on the white linoleum. "I'm serious," I insisted. "Mr. Mortman, he's really a monster." Randy laughed. "He's funny looking." "Randy, it's not nice to make fun of people's looks," Mom said crossly. She turned back to me. "See what you're teaching your little brother? Can't you set a good example?" "But Mom!" "Lucy, please get into dry clothes," Dad pleaded. "Then come down and set the table, okay?" I was so frustrated. I tilted my head back and let out an angry growl. "Doesn't anyone here believe me?" I cried. "This really isn't the time for your monster stories," Mom said, turning back to her meatballs. "Larry, you're making them too big," she scolded my father. "They're supposed to be small and delicate." "But I like big meatballs," Dad insisted. No one was paying attention to me. I turned and stomped angrily out of the kitchen. "Is Mr. Mortman really a monster?" Randy called after me. "I don't know, and I don't care about anything," I screamed back. I was just so angry and upset. They didn't have to ignore me like that. All they cared about was their stupid meatballs. Up in my room, I pulled off my wet clothes and tossed them on the floor. I changed into jeans and a tank top. "Is Mr. Mortman really a monster?" Randy's question repeated in my head. Did I imagine the whole thing? Do I just have monsters on the brain? It had been so dark and shadowy in the library, with all the lights turned off. Maybe Mr. Mortman didn't eat the flies. Maybe he pulled them out of the jar and fed them to his pet turtles. Maybe I imagined that he ate them. Maybe his head didn't swell up like a balloon. Maybe his eyes didn't pop out. Maybe that was just a trick of the darkness, the dancing shadows, the dim gray light. Maybe I need glasses. Maybe I'm crazy and weird. Lucy, hurry down and set the table, my dad called up the stairs. Okay, coming. As I made my way downstairs, I felt all mixed up. I didn't mention Mr. Mortman at dinner. Actually, Mom brought him up. What book did you choose to read this week? She asked. Frankenstein, I told her. Dad groaned. More monsters, he cried, shaking his head. Don't you ever get enough monsters? You see them wherever you go. Do you have to read about monsters too? Dad has a big booming voice. Everything about my dad is big. He looks very tough, with a broad chest and powerful looking arms. When he shouts, the whole house shakes. Randy, you did a great job with the string beans, Mom said, quickly changing the subject. After dinner, I helped Dad with the dishes. Then I went upstairs to my room to start reading Frankenstein. I'd seen the old movie of Frankenstein on TV, so I knew what it was about. It was about a scientist who builds a monster, and the monster comes to life. It sounded like my kind of story. I wondered if it was true. To my surprise, I found Randy in my room, sitting on my bed, waiting for me. What do you want? I asked. I really don't like him messing around in my room. Tell me about Mr. Mortman, he said. I could tell by his face that he was scared and excited at the same time. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I realized I was eager to tell someone about what had happened in the library, so I told Randy the whole story, starting with how I had to go back there because I'd left my rollerblades. Randy was squeezing my pillow against his chest and breathing really hard. The story got him pretty scared, I guess. I was just finishing the part where Mr. Mortman stuffed a handful of flies into his mouth. Randy gasped. He looked sick. Lucy! My dad burst angrily into the room. What is your problem? Nothing, Dad. How many times do we have to tell you not to frighten Randy with your silly monster stories? Silly? I shrieked. But Dad, this one is true. He made a disgusted face and stood there glaring at me. I expected fire to come shooting out of his nostrils at any minute. I'm not scared, really, Randy protested, coming to my defense. But my poor brother was as white as the pillow he was holding and trembling all over. This is your last warning, Dad said. I mean it, Lucy. I'm really angry. He disappeared back downstairs. I stared at the doorway where he'd been standing. I'm really angry too, I thought. I'm really angry that no one in this family believes me when I'm being serious. I knew at that moment that I had no choice. I had to prove that I wasn't a liar. I had to prove that I wasn't crazy. I had to prove to Mom and Dad that Mr. Mortman was a monster.